Generating a positive mindset is something that's really important as part of resilience. So this section will walk you through several tools that you can use. So the impossibility of a negative task. What on earth does that mean? Have you ever said to any of your children, don't run, you'll fall? Yeah? Okay, that's a negative task, right? The don't run. And we can't process a negative instruction. Our brains just don't do it. So we hear, right, run, you'll fall, and then we fall. So have you ever walked across a room thinking with a white shirt on or a white t-shirt on with a red glass of wine, and you go, I mustn't trip here. Okay. It's exactly the same thing. So we're giving ourselves a negative anchor, which means that we can't do it because our brains process the positive stuff. So if I say to you, right, I do not want you to think about a white bear, mustn't think about a white bear, don't look at that white bear, it's impossible. You set yourself up to failure. And there's a lovely, this guy, Dan Wegner, did all these experiments at Harvard that don't think about a white bear. And the instruction was, in the experiments, you're not allowed to think about a white bear. And of course, the only way to check that you're not thinking about white bear is to think about the white bear. So you can't tell whether you're being successful. You can't be successful. That's a problem. Because if you say to yourself, I mustn't crumble, I mustn't fail, it's a very difficult task for us to do. We're setting ourselves up to do it. So when you're wanting to help people to manage their way out of resilience, we have to be very careful about the languaging, and that was why I was making you think, how do you express this in a more positive frame? So that framing is something that is really important, which I'm sure you know. So the white bear task. Now here's another one. I love this. This is one of his experiments, right? So you must, right, four experiments. A, hold the pendulum steady, right? So giving people a pendulum, hold it steady, right? So B, right, keep the pendulum from swinging, right? So don't make the pendulum swing. So the minute you say keep it from swinging, it's a negative thing. So people, you can't do it. And then we've got, right, hold it steady while counting backwards from 1,000 in threes. So this is just, so then what's happening is you're having to do two tasks at the same time. So remember, resilience is the same thing at work. I've got to be resilient about this right? So it just shows you that too much cognitive overload means that the task is less likely to be successful. And then we've got, right, don't swing it, count backwards, right, keep it from swinging parallel. So we've got hold it steady, keep it. So that's just hold it steady is neither positive nor negative, is it? It's just hold it steady, but this is the negative one. So look how much worse it gets. So it's very important that when we're helping people, we think about the words. And I'm sure that somewhere in your lives in training, you'll have been told that words are only 5% of your communication, that Moravian bollocks. Okay, it's just not true. That was an experiment that was done under very different conditions, which was about conflict, and people were set up against each other in conflict, and it was to look at their body language. And to assess body language. It's not true that 5% of our communication is words, or 7%. It's a lot more than that. And especially when we're looking after other people, we need to think about how we position and frame stuff. So why does that matter? Well, you've already talked about, we keep coming back to these mood hoovers. So if we look at the top left-hand thing there, that was just to remind me of social networks. And when I say social network, we are now a social network. We've all met each other. So if I come in now and become absolutely vile to, say, Liz, I'm rude and horrible and put her down, she's likely to catch my mood. We know that. But then what happens is Liz will take it away, right, and potentially give it to Heather, my bad mood. So it's travelled 1, 2, and then Heather may take it away and give it to Anna. So we know that emotion travels to 3 degrees. That's so 3 relationships, 1, 2, 3, in a social network. So that is really important, because when you've got people who you're working with, right, if they are being horrible in your meetings, right, it's not just one person who's affected, it'll be everybody in the meeting, and then it has this kind of mushroom effect out there. So if you think there are 8 people in a meeting, one person being horrible, 7 people picking that mood up, and then they're going to go and have how many interactions? Right, you suddenly get this multiplicity, this multiplier effect. So that is why thinking about stopping that is so important, because they will be affecting other people in the network, which is, Heather, what you were referring to before. So it's really important to remember the social network effect, which is the real relationship that we have in real time. It's not Facebook. Okay. So I just wanted to mention that. Now I'd like you to think about, we're just going to leave the headspace thing for a minute while I just try and make my app work.
Yeah.
Fine, because I'd like to just do a 10-minute mindfulness session just to see how we feel about that at the end of it. But I need to get my app working because I set it all up this morning. Anyway, tech. We will do that. And then what I'd like to do then now is thinking about reframing. So we get the positive effect. So I'd like you to think about a difficult situation that you've got at work, something that's could be working better, and I would like you to just share it very briefly with someone, and then think about how can you reframe it positively. How can you find positive words to talk about this thing? So let's just imagine the situation that you have is that you had a negative interaction with somebody, and you want to tell them that it was a negative interaction. Did anybody have that as a situation?
Yes.
No. Oh, all right. I'm not a mind reader. So let's just. So, how can you frame that positively? Let's just think about it. How do you say that positively?
When you tell somebody about it.
Yeah.
I think for me it's around saying I'm a little bit confused as to what's just happened there.
I'm confused about what's happened. Okay, yes. What's the positive opposite of confusion?
Interested.
Yeah.
I'd like clarity. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I
like.
It wasn't clear.
That's negative, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love clarity.
Yes.
And to help me build more clarity.
Can you explain a little bit more
Yeah.
as to what happened?
Tell me a little bit more about what was going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you see? It's quite difficult to start doing this, but it puts a different spin on things, because then you're not going, you didn't tell me, you didn't make it clear. Right? So there's no judgment and blame attached to it. You're accepting it and you're saying, oh, I want something good in this, right? So this is, you talk about, how do we build a resilient mindset? And this is how you help others build a resilient mindset, by ensuring that you can frame things and start catching yourself when you're talking about this kind of stuff. And once you start becoming aware of it, then you can start positioning things slightly differently. So that is our second tool. So here we go. So we reframe positively. Now, we've also got our self-talk that accompanies our situations. So if you think about going to have a conversation with somebody to tell them, I would like to have different kinds of interactions with you, what happens to you physiologically? You feel a bit tense. Okay. And what do you tell yourself? Right, okay. So in the same way as what has to come out of here needs to be positive, what goes on in here is the same. So I'd like you to imagine that you're just about to deal with a situation that you've got. What is your positive self-talk right now? So could you just, again, chat with, what are you going to be saying to yourself that's positive? Because if you tell yourself you're going to trip, you will. If you tell yourself it's going to go badly, it will. I had a colleague who, we teach a lot at London Business School, and there's one particular senior group, they're called Sloan, and they're very experienced, they're generally in their late 30s, 40s, and they've all had very senior jobs, and they're being sent there by their organisations to get board ready. And Philippa used to say all the time, I hate this group, I do so badly, I trip up, I always get the really difficult people. So I said to her, and to what extent are you telling yourself you always get the difficult people? I would like us now, this was in the morning, I'd like us now to sit and just work through a positive affirmation. What can you tell yourself that it's going to go great? Everyone's going to be bought in, it's going to be really great cohesion in the group, and you're going to get a lot of work done. So we sat and we did that. And she came out saying, it's amazing. They were all fabulous. So, you know, we talk about self-fulfilling a minute ago. That's exactly how you make that happen. So let's just have what can you be telling yourself for this particular interaction as you go into it in a positive way? Oh, just before you do that, one thing before you do that. Right, back to sports psychology. I said I'd mentioned some sports psychology again. I spent the whole of one weekend reading 2 papers by this guy, Hatzigeorgiades. I really didn't understand a word of what the papers were. I had to battle my way through what he was saying. But in essence, it was quite simple, which is there's 2 kinds of self-talk that sports psychologists teach. One is motivational, yes I can, and the other is instructional, whack the ball into the corner of the court. And it looks like when you do randomized controlled studies about what is most effective, it is not whack the ball into the corner of the court. It is, I can, I will, smack it, whatever it is for you. You know, knock my socks off, knock their socks off. It's the motivational one that has the most impact. So I don't know whether you do that in the work that you do. You're telling people, yes, you can. The most painful physio I ever had used to shout, relax, 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 and hurt me like hell. And I knew that was a bad sign. So anyway, so think about, do I want it to be motivational or do I want it to be instructional to myself? So your positive self-talk, I would recommend this one. So back to your situation.
Okay.
Which one are you going to go for? Self-talk. What we've been working around here is how you can reframe something positively and reframe what's going on in your mind, because if you reframe it in here, then it's easier what comes out here. But sometimes you have to start with the situation before the external bit before we go to the internal bit. Don't know why I'm clutching this thing. So I'm now going to, let's just do we're going to do 2 things. We're going to do an internal mindfulness thing, and then we're going to do an external physical thing, just to look at the difference between the 2. So we're going to, hopefully this will work. This is level 1, session 2 from Headspace. It's only 10 minutes long, and I'm going to play it. And I'd just like you to try and go with it. Now, it may refer to some of the things that have already been from session 1. Just ignore the things from session 1. These are just different tools that you can use. So having looked at how emotion is catching, having done a bit of mindfulness, having thought about how you reframe something and make it positive, and then how you reframe your self-talk, we're now going to do some power posing. Have any of you done any of this? Power posing? No? Yes? Yeah. So this has come from work done by a woman called Amy Cuddy. And Amy Cuddy's at Harvard, and she was looking at why is it that some, in her classes, why do people speak up? The women don't speak up, the men speak up and they ask questions. And she started doing some work on how to enable women to speak up in their MBA classes at Harvard. So I shall just let Amy do it for herself.
I hope that in 10 minutes I'm going to convince you that if you tweak your nonverbal behaviors in really pretty easy and simple ways for a short period of time, it's going to make you feel more powerful through physiological changes in your body. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So here are some examples of power poses. So what I want you to note about these is that they are all very open and expansive. So those are the 2 sort of criteria that determine whether it's a power pose, whether you're open and you're expanding your body. All of these, I think, are examples of power posing reflecting power that you already have or a victory that you feel. So people do this, I mean, this is very common after victories. They put their arms up, or when you're generally feeling powerful, you're more likely to do something like this. You feel open, you feel disinhibited. So it reflects power. It's also used to communicate power. So I'm sure that you have the LBJ treatment up at the top there. So again, it's making yourself bigger, getting in other people's space, reaching out. So it's used to reflect power and to communicate power. And this is true not just for humans, but also for non-human animals. This is just one example, but you have primates who will bulge their chests to make themselves bigger, the peacock fanning his tail feathers. You have even cats will idle sideways and raise their back to make themselves look bigger. So this is common across both human and non-human animals. Now, on the other hand, powerlessness is reflected and communicated through these contractive closed postures. So this is a very sad, powerless person, but this is an example. And it really is just everyday things that you do, like crossing your arms, also touching your face and touching your neck. This is really communicates powerlessness. Anything that you do that makes you smaller, and hunching your shoulders. This is about powerlessness. It reflects it and it reinforces it. So we know already that power causes power posing. So when you possess power, whether it's short-term or long-term, or when you're communicating power, you do things like this. You power pose. You do the Wonder Woman pose. But what we wanted to know was whether you could fake it till you make it. So let me tell you what we did in this study. So first, people come into the lab. So let's take this female participant. And we first take a saliva sample, and that's our time 1 hormone sample. It's very easy. They just spit into a little vial. They then, for 2 minutes, take on 2 high power poses. So 1 minute each. They're just asked to sit in these certain positions. They don't look at pictures because we don't want to prime them with a concept of power. We describe to them how to sit. This is just one example of a high power pose. 2 minutes. After that, they fill out some questionnaires. We ask them how powerful they feel, and we also give them an opportunity to gamble. Because when people feel powerful, they're much more risk tolerant. And this is a gamble where they're endowed with $2, and they can roll a die and have a 50-50 chance of increasing that to $4. So that's our risk tolerance measure. And then we take, after about 17 minutes, which is the right amount of time between these time 1 and time 2 samples, we take another hormone sample because we want to know what their baseline levels are. Half of their participants are randomly assigned to that. Half of them are randomly assigned to this condition. And in this condition, they take on 2 low power poses instead. Same thing. This is what we find on risk tolerance. We find that the high power posers are significantly more likely to take the gamble. But what's more interesting to us is this. So this is their change in testosterone and cortisol. 2 minutes in a high power pose makes your testosterone rise significantly and your cortisol drop significantly. 2 minutes in a low power pose does the opposite. 2 minutes. And I just want to say, this is in a room alone. So they're not getting feedback. It's not like they're standing like this and people are like, wow, she's really powerful. That's not what's happening. They're not getting that feedback and going, oh, I must be powerful. Like, this is really reinforcing. They're sitting alone in a room. So what we wanted to show next was that just doing this before you go into a room does change your performance in a significant way. Not only does it change your hormones, but it actually makes you perform better. So in the second study, we again have the high and low power poses, 2 minutes each, and this is what happens this time. You go in, you do these power poses, and then we subject you to what's called the Trier social stress test. And this is something that's used in the lab to really increase people's cortisol, and I'll tell you what's stressful about it. You are told you have 5 minutes to write a speech. That's stressful. And the speech is about your dream job, and you are supposed to convince 2 evaluators why you are suited for this dream job, but you cannot lie or misrepresent yourself. These 2 evaluators are going to be evaluating you with clipboards in real time as you give this speech, and you're going to be filmed, and then other people will evaluate you later. Okay, so that's stressful because we know that people are terrified of public speaking. I'm actually terrified right now, but I'm not anymore, but I used to be. But so what happens though, that's not the most stressful thing. What's most stressful about it is that these 2 evaluators are trained to sit here like this. No nonverbal feedback, totally neutral expression, no nodding, no movement, no shows of approval or even disapproval. Only they're locked onto you, they're watching you, they're not spacing out, and they're giving you no nonverbals. This is very stressful. Okay, so we do, again, 2 low power poses or high power poses before this job interview where people are basically saying, you stink, you know, with their nonverbals. And again, they're not in these poses while they're in the job interview. They do them before. What we find is this. We then take these videos, have 2 coders who are hypothesis and condition blind, code them on a variety of nonverbals, all kinds of performance measures, and we just find these whopping effects. When you do this 2 minutes before and you go in, these hypothesis blind coders are like, hire her. And when you do this, they say, no way, don't hire this person. So here are the takeaways. First, in practice, prepare in advance only if it's for a few minutes. Okay, so what do people do before they go into a job interview? They're sitting down, I wish I had a chair, like this, and they're looking at their iPhone. They're making themselves as small as possible. It's the last thing you want to do. Instead, go to a bathroom stall and stretch out. Like, just walk around, be moving, have your feet spread, you know, have your arms spread, be reaching out. If you're in your own office, put your feet up on the desk. No one's watching you. Do whatever you want to do. You know, the cultural and gender norms don't matter. If you have some space that's private, do that before you go into the interview, before you give the speech, before you give the pitch. 2 minutes. Second, during the interaction, you want to expand without dominating or without complimenting. So people tend to do one of 2 things. They either go in and they think they've got to own the whole room, but really what they're doing is like stealing the room. And people are like, I don't like this guy, you know? So so you want to go into that situation. If somebody has higher, say you go into a job interview and you already have lower power, you don't want to go in and try to be the most dominant person in the room. But the other thing that people do is they compliment. When they go in to somebody who has higher status, they tend to exaggerate the difference by making themselves even smaller. So I want to say, don't do either of those things. Instead, go in and be as big as you can be comfortably. Square off your shoulders, stand with your feet apart. If you have to sit, try to rest your arms on the arms of the chair. That will prevent you from doing this. If you have a prop, sorry, I keep touching this. If you have a prop like a whiteboard or something, put your hand on it or the back of a chair, anything that forces you to stretch out. That's what you want to do when you're in the room without really coming across as super dominant. But here, there's a big picture takeaway that I think is particularly relevant, especially to a lot of what the fellows have been talking about in the last couple of days. What other minimal manipulations can empower people? I mean, this is 2 minutes in a pose, and it leads to these outcomes for both. By the way, this is not moderated by gender. This is for women and men, and for people of different races. So what other minimal manipulations can we come up with that are going to lead people to feel more powerful, to feel more confident, to feel more engaging and warm and excited about what they're doing? And I think I'm going to stop there.
So what we've been looking at in the last hour is these internal and external tools, and just in one sphere. What is it that you can do that is as Amy Cuddy said, it's a minimal manipulation that you can change how you think, change what you say, change how you stand, and change how you're feeling internally.